Deemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast on this Wednesday edition. I appreciate you tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcasts. I would really appreciate that. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, thecarljacksonshow.com on YouTube. We're also on Rumble if you prefer Rumble. And also follow us on social media, The Carl Jackson Show on social media, all things social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Getter, True Social, you name it. The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. And again, or actually not again, I do want to thank my sponsors for this show, Pure Health. Guys, listen, if you're looking to ignite your fat burning metabolism, if you want to boost your energy levels and transform how you look and feel, you got to start taking care of your liver. Fatty liver affects 100 million Americans. This is why so many of us struggle with weight gain and low energy levels. It's manufactured in the US of A, praise God, approved by American doctors, and it contains 12 powerful botanicals that are clinically proven to recharge and protect your liver. So try Liver Health Formula risk-free and receive a free bottle of nano-powered omega-3 to keep your heart healthy. Claim your special offer today by going to getliverhelp.com/Carl, getliverhelp.com/Carl, getliverhelp.com/Carl. All right, guys. Now, I've been asking a question, and I'll be frank with you. I've been going through so many columns. I wasn't sure exactly where to go today. But the big issue seems to me to be, have we arrived at a police state? Now, I know there's big news, Trump and DeSantis. I think that's going to continue to be news as we go forward. Ron DeSantis made a statement last night, which I forget what it is, but basically he made a more forceful statement saying that if he were president, or if he were to run against Biden, a couple of things. If he were to run against Biden, he would defeat Biden. He believes he would defeat Biden. He said this in an interview with Piers Morgan. So he said he would defeat Biden. Another thing he said to kind of differentiate himself from Trump is that he would have fired Fauci. All right, so that's one thing. A couple of things that he said to try to assert himself. I do believe that Ron DeSantis, and I love Ron DeSantis, I love Trump too, but I do believe that Ron DeSantis is reaching a point where he needs to either get in or get out. Because a lot of people are going to grow tired of that relatively quickly. And listen, let's face it, we have a big fight ahead of us when it comes against the left. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that are ahead of us. I'm not mad at Ron DeSantis. I'm not mad at Trump. I think a lot of this bickering back and forth has gone too far. Ron DeSantis hasn't even declared. And I realize that things are going to get nasty. But for God's sakes, the guy hasn't declared. And what I'm not going to do is bow down to the left or acquiesce to the left and destroy both candidates. I just think that's really asinine. And I think conservatives are asking for trouble. That is my personal opinion. Now, but I do want to talk about the things that I think are exceptionally dangerous. And I do have to ask the question, have we entered a police state in America? I mean, are we there? We've talked about the makings of a dictator on this program with Joe Biden. There's no doubt about it. But I was just going through some columns, going through some headlines. And first, I want to reiterate what's happening with Alvin Bragg, this Manhattan DA that is in my opinion, a puppet of George Soros and both the White House. There were a couple of articles that I ran across, but one I want to just share with you quickly. It was on Zero Hedge. All right, here's the headline. 700 New York Police Department riot cops are mobilized, or 700 New York Police Department riot cops mobilized. Steel barriers have been deployed ahead of potential Trump arrest. Guys, you do understand that this would be the first president in American history or to have been arrested. You do understand that this is setting a precedent. Well, he deserves to be arrested. What he did with Stormy Daniels and all this kind of stuff, guys. It's complete and utter nonsense. Everyone knows it. Alan Dershowitz is speaking out against it. Even leftists are saying Alvin Bragg is going a bit too far. This guy wants to notch a victory up on his belt and be some left-wing social justice warrior hero. But what he's doing is actually doing more damage to the country. One thing that sets us apart from the rest of the world And I remember hearing Senator Mike Lee talk about this at one point in time. But one thing that sets us apart is we don't arrest our political leaders. Yes, I do wish we would sometimes. And when he says political leaders, he meant the president. Now, obviously, a congressman, a senator, if they're caught doing wrong and someone does prosecute them, not necessarily in office or out of office, they can go to jail. We don't see that happen with our presidents, past, present, president. We just don't see it happen. And the reason is we want to send the rest of the world a message to the rest of the world that we're not a banana republic. Well, that changes with Alvin Bragg. This is a guy, he's the worst kind of prosecutor. Let me say this. He is the worst kind of prosecutor. He's a prosecutor that claims to care about the little man, that claims to care about his community, that claims to care about safety. Yet what he does when he gets in office is he downgrades over 50% of felony cases to misdemeanor cases. So what happens? Criminals get back out on the street. It's absolutely insane what this guy is doing. You're talking about a non-disclosure payment possibly to Stormy Daniels that Trump may have paid in order to keep the woman quiet. And I say may have paid because his argument is that he paid a legal fee. So the argument for Bragg would be that Trump lied about paying a legal fee. How do you even prove that? You have another attorney, Robert Costello, that said Michael Cohen, who claims that Trump was paying him to pay off Stormy Daniels, another attorney that was the attorney for Michael Cohen and also attorney for Rudy Giuliani, says the guy is completely lying, that he shifted his story so many times from when the FBI or whomever first came knocking on his door because the guy was scared of jail time. So how do we take that? So how do we take a man that's willing to go after a former president, a man that has overstepped his bounds? He's a Manhattan DA. How is it that he skips the legislative branch? James Comer made a great point on this, goes right to a former president. I mean, he's overstepping his authority. There's no doubt about it. And the media are fawning over it because so many on the left want to see Trump shackled. They want to see him perp walked. They want their vengeance, but they don't even realize for what. I mean, non-disclosure agreements. You had a woman that I read about in the Hillary Clinton campaign that had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. People that worked for John Edwards, a woman that had a over 30-year affair with Bill Clinton. These people signed non-disclosure agreements, and there was nothing illegal about it. So this guy would have to. The only thing that Alvin Bragg could argue is that what happened with Trump is he asked them basically if he could. What's the story? He asked them basically. He would essentially try to up the charge. He would try to up the charge from a misdemeanor, which that would have been not an accounting era, but I want to make sure that I call it correctly here. Let me see if I can find the story. I apologize about this. Indictment will hand Trump. I'm sorry, I've got so many stories open on this particular story. Here it is. All right, so let me just read part of this if you don't mind, because I think this guy is a complete and utter disaster. And I'll read part of his record too, because I just think this is wholly dangerous. While the Manhattan District Attorney is pursuing a possible felony indictment against former President Trump on a charge stemming from an alleged hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, the Democratic prosecutor downgraded half of his felony cases to misdemeanors last year. The DA Alvin Bragg is reportedly targeting Trump in a grand jury probe into an alleged hush money scheme involving Daniels, an adult porn star who received $130,000. You guys know this, but I'm just reiterating what's transpired near the end of the 2016 presidential campaign, so she wouldn't disclose her alleged affair with Trump in 2006. All right. So then you have the former Trump attorney, Michael Cohen, pays Daniels $133,000 or $130,000. I'm sorry. Trump reimbursed him through installments. Bragg could argue, this is the argument, that Trump falsified. That's what I was looking for. The argument could be that Trump falsified business records after federal prosecutors in a case against Cohen said that Trump's company falsely accounted for Trump's reimbursement of Cohen's legal expenses. Okay, so if Trump falsified, how do you prove that Trump falsified business records when he has Cohen billing him for legal fees. Like, how do you do that? This is a bunch of trumped up nonsense is what it is. Pun not intended. But they would, in order for Trump to be prosecuted on this, they would have to get him on a second charge. It goes on to say, again, Bragg could argue that Trump falsified business records after federal prosecutors in a case against Cohen said that Trump's company falsely accounted for Trump's reimbursement of Cohen as legal expenses. But falsifying business records is a misdemeanor in New York. It could become a felony if Trump's, quote, intent to defraud, close quote, included an intent to conceal or commit a second crime. What would that second crime be? This is all nonsense. See, this guy is running out of time. The statute of limitations is running out. So this guy wants to hop this charge up to a felony to try to rehash old crap that doesn't make a difference. Meanwhile, think about this. He's trying to up the charges on Trump in order to try to get Trump while he's downgrading charges on felons, actual felons in the Manhattan, that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office are prosecuting so that they can walk scot-free in the name of social justice while they go out and just create more crime on the street. Like violent crime is up 27% under this guy since he's been in office. It's absolutely insane. So the question is, are we living in a banana republic? You have media outlets that are cheering this guy on. But if the tables are turned, it would be insane. It would be crazy. All right. So let me just bring you a couple of more stories that are on the tip sheet and stories that I've been reading through. All right. So Fauci dismisses a lab leak theory once again in a PBS documentary. This, according to the Daily Mail. Dr. Anthony Fauci laughed off lab leak questions again in a PBS documentary that aired tonight, despite growing concerns about his ties to COVID's origin. The former White House doctor, who has been accused of being fame hungry by right-wing critics, allowed a camera crew to shadow him for 23 months, starting in January of 2021, as he led the U.S.'s COVID response. The grinning medical advisor claimed the lab leak was molecularly impossible because the viruses manipulated in Wuhan under his watch were so different from the eventual pathogen that caused the global outbreak. So let me say this. This was from, and Gabe, man, because I'm talking about this, obviously, it's so sad, man. We don't live in a free America anymore. Six smoking guns, why a doctor turned U.S. senator believes COVID-19 actually came from a Wuhan lab. Why is the media allowing him? That's another reason why I'm asking, do we live in a society where we're now a banana republic? I mean, we have a complicit media that's just whatever the state says goes. This is absolutely insane to me. All right. So now, long before key components of the intelligence community acknowledged they believe COVID-19 came from a lab leak, Kansas Republican Senator Roger Marshall has drawn a bullseye around the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I won't go on with that summary, but I do want to tell you the 6 points, the 6 reasons he believes that that COVID-19 came from a Wuhan lab. Number one, the proximity of the lab to the initial outbreak. He says, and I quote, "There's only 3 labs in the world doing research on this type of virus. Only 3 labs in the entire world. And this virus breaks out right next to it, 1,000 miles away from from where that virus is supposed to be located in a cave of bats." He says that's smoking gun number 1. Number 2, no intermediate species. After 3 years, Marshall noted China is still unable to quote, show that there's an intermediate species, as Fauci continues to claim, by which the virus passed in its leap from bats to humans. He says, "I'm a biochemistry major, nuclear engineering physician." Good Lord, this guy is smart. "I get the science. I've always got the science of it," Marshall said, explaining that the virus should have jumped from bats to some type of an animal and then to humans. Wow. Number 3, he says, the virus protein spike. The protein spike's ability to extraordinarily and preferentially bind to human lung cells over bats points directly to genetic lab engineering. This is strong stuff. Researchers have found that a sequence of 8 amino acids on a critical part of the virus spike protein is identical to an amino acid sequence found in cells that line human airways. Number 4, the furin cleavage site, he says, Furin. Never heard of that. But he says the furin cleavage site would be the 4th smoking gun, a perfect junction at the S1, S2 part of this virus that the human lung cells just happen to have the cleaver in there to cleave it. So it dumps its genetic information into you. He goes on to say, Marshall said, Nobel laureate David Baltimore agrees. When I first saw the furin cleavage site in the viral sequence with its arginine codons, I said to my wife, it was the smoking gun for the origin of the virus. Wow. These features make a powerful challenge to the idea of natural origin for SARS-2, he said. Number 5, database deletion. China deleted a key DNA database from its COVID research in September 2019. The Wuhan Institute of Virology takes its entire genomic data bank offline, keeping it from the rest of the world just before the outbreak. Number 6, lack of natural progenitor. No progenitor to COVID-19 has been found showing its natural ancestry. So he says, and I quote, we've never found that progenitor. There should be a cousin, a grandfather, an uncle of COVID-19, and we've never found it. This is coming from an extremely smart guy who knows the science. This is, what state are we living in? Seriously. A former president that could be potentially arrested upon a non-disclosure agreement. We've got a bureaucratic tyrant or former in Anthony Fauci and a complicit media that won't share you the truth, that actually works in cahoots with the federal government. It's insane to me where we are now. I want to circle back real quick to this guy, Alvin Bragg. There was another column that I started to talk about and I just steered away from. I want to go back to real quickly here. And again, it was from Zero Hedge. 700 NYPD riot cops mobilized, steel barriers deployed ahead of a potential Trump arrest. Why? So the New York Police Department mobilized 700 riot cops, deployed steel barricades and around the Manhattan criminal court in anticipation of civil disorder should the Manhattan District Attorney's Office order the arrest of former President Donald Trump following a potential grand jury indictment for allegedly paying a former porn star for her silence ahead of the 2016 presidential campaign. What barriers? Listen, I'm going to tell you right now. It is a lie that a bunch of conservatives, Republicans, and Trump supporters are just out there ready to destroy and break down. We get property value. The left doesn't, right? I mean, seriously, we get property value. So you had a few bad apples at the January 6th, mostly peaceful protests. So a few bad apples. And thank God Tucker Carlson has exposed many of the media narratives out there, just complete and utter lies. And they were the whole entire time, just taking down a case by case, it seems to me, on his show. So praise God. Praise God for that. But so why would you put up these barriers? Yeah, I had a caller call into Officer Tatum's show last night, and he asked the question, are they expecting Antifa rioters, BLM rioters? Like, what are they really expecting there? And that makes a good point. It's a good point. I'm sorry, because leftists are the ones that are typically violent. It isn't people on the right. We can go there and peacefully protest. There's been all types of protests across the nation when President Trump was in office where it did not turn violent. So if Donald Trump is indicted, it says here, the New York Times gleefully reports, quote, he would be fingerprinted, he would be photographed, he could even be handcuffed. Man, they're just salivating over this. And if Donald Trump is indicted by a Manhattan grand jury in the days ahead for his role in the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, the former president of the U.S. will be read the standard Miranda warning. He will be told that he has the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney. I do think that this would propel him to win the GOP nomination and perhaps even the White House. because people are just sick of this crap. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. I mean, for God's sakes, you got Elon Musk, you got Chris Rock out there warning people, you got Van Jones out there warning people about the impact this will have. This would only give Trump momentum. It really would. So if you want Trump to have momentum, go ahead and arrest him, Alvin Bragg. This guy thinks he's going to be looked at as a hero. I think the tables are going to turn on this guy. I really do. And New Yorkers, listen, we may disagree politically, but I believe most people want to be safe. What are you guys doing with this guy in office? Get rid of this guy, man. Get rid of this guy. Crime is up. Violent crime, 27%. Get rid of this guy. I mean, so I really do believe this is all to create a spectacle, right? This is for aesthetics. The only people that are going to cause a ruckus enough where you have to put up barriers, they're not going to be Trump supporters. And you're talking about in Manhattan, for God's sakes. It ain't going to be a lot of Trump supporters there. So, and Trump supporters, don't go there. If you protest in an area where you're safe, where Republicans are around, people that are sheriffs that respect the First Amendment, make sure that you protest there if you do any protesting whatsoever. All right, so just a couple of more headlines that I want to run through, because I do believe that we are on the path to a police state. And I'm starting to wonder if we've arrived, if we've reached a point of no return. And maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but I do believe this. If we don't get this next election right, you know what I mean? I don't see us turning back except, and I hate to think this way, but through violence. I don't see a peaceful ending, and I'm not advocating for that. I don't want that, but I don't see a peaceful ending. If these leftists keep going, it just as far wacky as they have been. Let me share a couple more headlines, a couple more stories here. And please catch me on Officer Tatum's show tonight. I will be in again tonight. He'll be back on Thursday, and then I'll be back in for him on Friday. Here's another story that's fascinating to me. Missouri AG pushes to limit gender transition surgery. Now, here's what's fascinating to me. I'm not sure many people are going to talk about this, but I read it from another source. This one is from the AP. I'll give you the summary here. But before I read the summary, what's fascinating to me is the Missouri AG is pushing a limit to gender transition surgery because the Republican legislature, the state senators in Missouri fell short. Bunch of protests erupting up there in Missouri. So a lot of these guys turned into cowards. So the AG had to step up with some common sense. So thank God for the new AG in Missouri. Missouri's Republican Attorney General on Monday said he will limit access to gender-affirming care for minors, sidestepping the GOP-led Senate. Okay, this is where I read it. Sidestepping the GOP-led Senate as it struggles to pass a law banning the practice for children completely. As hundreds of activists rallied at the Capitol to pressure lawmakers to act on a bill, AG Andrew Bailey announced plans to file an emergency rule. The rule will require an 18-month waiting period, 15-hour-long therapy sessions, and treatment of any mental illnesses before Missouri doctors can provide that kind of care to transgender children. Now, this is a good start. I don't think children should be mutilated. Frankly, I don't think adults should be either. But at least this is a good start. Thank God they have a good AG out there. According to Bailey's office, the emergency rule also requires disclosure of information about puberty blocker drugs, including that they are experimental. I love that. Not approved by the FDA, and the FDA has warned they can lead to brain swelling and blindness. Put the information out there. Put the information out there. Now, the media isn't going to cover that. But sadly, I wanted to cover that here because this is a step that AGs can make. I wasn't aware that they could make, at least in Missouri they can, and I assume that is the case nationwide. Another story, actually a couple that I want to get to. One, in healthcare, there was a great column at the Federalist. I'll be touching on it on Officer Tatum's show tonight more extensively, but it's titled, "In Healthcare, Freedom is the Biggest Shortage." Let me ask you guys this. Have we gotten used to tyranny? I mean, I'm talking about those of us that claim to be patriots and love freedom. Have we gotten used to tyranny? Hat tip to Federalists. In healthcare, freedom is the biggest shortage. A woman by the name of Dean Waldman, or Dean, maybe it's a man, Dean Waldman. I'm not sure, Deanne or Dean. Forgive me. Anyway, from the Federalists, Americans cannot make their own medical decisions or decide how to spend their healthcare dollars. Bureaucrats do that. Have you heard any talk about ending Obamacare lately from any Republican? I don't even hear it from the presidential candidates, and this is what frustrates me. Again, Trump, DeSantis, who I'm not. I don't know how to explain this. Like, I want freedom. I want the dude that's going to bring us the most freedom. When they leave office, I want there to be more freedom restored to the American people than when they left office. For me, that's the measuring tool. Now, Trump, to his credit, did try to end Obamacare. He wanted Trump care, and it was going to be going to have a little more freedom than Obamacare. I forget the exact details of it, but basically it was going to be he was going to try to fix Obamacare. No, I don't want to fix Obamacare. I want to tear this crap out. I want it done. I don't want any semblance of socialized medicine in the United States. This is insane to me. I don't understand how we can claim to be the party or the people or the movement of freedom when nobody's even talking about this stuff. It's almost as if we're scared to. Now, when it comes to Medicaid, and Medicare, I do believe that's a little different. People have paid into it. I know some people get way more out than they actually paid in. I think if you eliminate fraud and abuse, it will make a tremendous difference. But when you're talking about health care for the rest of us, and I think we need to cap it at an age. When I say cap it, I think people of my generation, like Generation X, no. I mean, this nonsense has got to stop. I know nobody wants to talk about it, but it's very important. So whenever the news talks about healthcare issues, you hear about all of the system's problems, the shortages with money, the access to care, the doctor time. But what they don't talk about is freedom. So you guys realize that political bureaucrats are the ones that are making your decisions. When physicians are concerned, medicine is concerned, government bureaucrats, not the physicians on scene, triage critically ill patients, according to the column, based on crisis standards of care. And I know this to be true. We have these big mammoth hospital organizations that are popping up all over the place where doctors are losing their private practices. They can't compete with a lot of these big hospital systems, if you will. And so they go to work for these systems. And you know what? These systems are run by administrators. They're not run by the doctors. They're not run by the nurses. And these administrators adhere to government regulations. The column says here, non-physicians applying a checklist to decide who will live and who will die. Patients cannot choose who will operate on them, where, when, or even if. And of course, Americans cannot decide how to spend their healthcare dollars. Nameless, faceless bureaucrats do that. This is medical tyranny, and no one is talking about it. No one is talking about this stuff. Your doctors aren't free either, and I don't mean monetarily. They're not free to practice the way they want to. Your assigned physician doesn't get to choose your medication, doesn't get to choose a pharmacy benefits management. Or your medication, a pharmacy benefits management does that. A PBM, they call it. Operations are performed where the health plan instructs and by whom they choose. That's what we're under this Obamacare. Providers for Medicare and Medicaid patients must accept the federal payment reimbursement schedule. So if doctors are forced to accept Medicaid patients and their federal payment schedule, those doctors might just say, I'm not doing that. And then what does that do? What does that do for medical care? You have to go, drive God knows how far to see a doctor that would even be willing to see you. Now, I'm not knocking Medicaid or Medicare or any of that for people that need it, but when it comes to regular medicine, if the average person, the person like me that's self-employed, when you get health care, when you buy health care, all of this stuff is so controlled. All of it is so controlled. What's the difference between Medicare, Medicaid, and private health care nowadays? Not much. Not much, because government regulators have so much control. Biden is trying to pat himself on the back and saying he's reducing the cost of drug prices. No, he's reducing the quality of drug prices. He's reducing the choices that you'll have with drugs, because nobody can compete with the government that sets the rules. So essentially what you'll have is, okay, you can put price controls on a drug. Let's say it costs, I don't know, $30, let's say, to make a pill. That pill comes with certain ingredients. The government comes in and says, you gotta sell that pill for $10. And the manufacturer says, sell it for $10. I can't sell it for $10 because this material, and this material cost me $20 alone. So when I sell it for $30, I'm only making a $10 profit. Oh, well, you got to sell it for $10. Okay, I'll sell it for $10. But if I'm going to sell it for $10, I'm going to cut out this ingredient, this ingredient, this ingredient, and this ingredient so that it only costs me $5 to make. Oh, okay. That's fine with us, as long as you sell it for $10. But you don't get the same ingredients, you don't get the same quality, and you don't get choices. It's an absolute scam. Both the patients and providers live under medical tyranny. For providers, this creates an intolerable ethical conundrum. The author says medical ethics require a physician to provide the best care possible to his or her patients. And then patients believe, wrongly so, the provider has the commensurate responsibility to do just that. But that isn't the reality. Doctors can only prescribe the drugs. Again, the PBM allows. Surgery is done at the cheapest hospital, not the one where you'll get the best results. So we end up with this death by Q, which I didn't even know how to pronounce until today. Queue. Actually, I talked about it before, so maybe I knew how to pronounce it, but looking at it again, I did not know how to pronounce it. So single-payer healthcare systems, the acme of government medical tyranny, are in danger of collapse. You have the UK, they're in danger of collapse. Australia is in danger of collapse. Spain is in danger of collapse. And I do give Trump credit for this, because I completely forgot about this. He got rid of the individual payment mandate. So basically, it starts bankrupting Obamacare. The problem is we got a bunch of weaklings in office that don't want to go ahead and cut it all off. So I do give Trump credit for that. But if he returns to office, all right, and I hope that he does. If he returns to office, they need to get rid of this thing hook, line, and sinker. And I don't want to call it Trump care, and I don't want it to be a modification of Obamacare. I don't want that at all. I want somebody. This is why I want somebody on the stage besides Trump, because I want him to be challenged. If DeSantis is on there, I want him to challenge him on it. If Vivek Ramaswamy, I want him to, all of these guys together banging it out as far as policies, ideas are concerned, is very important. I don't think there should be a coronation to the White House. Trump doesn't own the White House. DeSantis doesn't own the White House. I know a lot of people talk about loyalty. Listen, their loyalty needs to be to the Constitution and to the people. All right. That's the loyalty that matters. Really, to the Constitution and to the people. What are they doing to uphold the Constitution as it exists? They need to fight for this stuff. I want to hear Trump talking about this. Listen, the only way this stuff, and this is the benefit of having a Trump and even a DeSantis, if he decides to announce, they have the biggest names. So if they don't talk about this stuff, nobody will. Nobody will. So you have the problem of death by Q, basically waiting in line forever until people kill over. All right. So healthcare system exists to keep people healthy, obviously, to save lives through timely medical care, but that's not happening as much anymore. All right. So the best demonstration, according to the columnist, is the failure. The best demonstration of system failure is death by Q, basically dying while you're waiting in line. for technically possible care that isn't provided in time. So under Obamacare, we went from average wait times or primary care doctor was 99 days. And that isn't necessarily like, hey, I'm calling my primary care doctor before Obamacare kicks in. How long, it's March. I can't get in until July. No, people would just typically, they'll extend it out. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I want to set up my next appointment then, or, something to that effect. All right. But after the Obamacare, the wait time has increased. So wait time has increased. It went from 99 days to 122 days. All right. The author's wife waited 7 months to see her primary doctor for chronic abdominal pain. It was inoperable pancreatic cancer. So she died 22 months after her diagnosis. Things could have been better if she could have got into the doctor's office sooner. An internal Veterans Affairs audit concluded 47,000 veterans may have died waiting in line for medical care. In Illinois in 2016, 752 Medicaid enrollees died waiting for treatment. Who's talking about this stuff? Who's talking about this stuff? There's 3 reasons for inaccessible medical care. First, the lack of providers. We want to sit there and pretend like there's a bunch of doctors and nurses out there. There's a shortage, guys. There's a shortage. There are too few physicians for too many patients. And this is why the open border situation is so dangerous. We don't think of it in terms of this. We always think of in terms of, them busting in our country. We think of the drugs, the fentanyl, all that stuff is important. We think of rising rental prices when illegals will come into a particular housing market, kind of flood the zone, renting out stuff, and a crime that may spike in areas. And we think about schools sometimes even. All right, teachers are going to be overwhelmed. But the medical industry is overwhelmed too. And we're just adding to it. It's already bad, and we're adding to it. We got too few doctors. We have too few doctors and too many patients. And there's not enough physicians to take care of everyone. There just simply isn't. So physicians are becoming increasingly unwilling to accept Medicaid or Medicare payment schedules or tolerate the administrative hassle. If they got to spend their time doing, hours and hours of paperwork instead of working on the patient, what good are they? And I'm talking about administrative paperwork where they're not even able to sit and take the time to learn new stuff. That was part of the problem when it came to COVID. A lot of this information the doctors were getting just comes from CDC, NIH, NIAID with fascist Fauci. And they don't have the time to sit because their caseload is huge and just study for themselves. They've done medical school. They freshen up on their work at the hospital and stuff, and they don't have any time beyond that. It says here, nationally, 31% of physicians refuse Medicaid patients. In Texas, it's more than 50%. The increasing number of doctors retiring early exacerbates the problem. Why do they want to deal with all this crap? They got enough money to retire. Why not just retire? There's an increasing number of patients demanding care, especially those with no charge or free government-supplied Medicaid coverage. In 2000, 15.6% of the U.S. population was enrolled in Medicaid. That's in 2000. In 2022, it's jumped to 25%. And keep in mind, our population is larger. Wow. 91,342,256 Americans. Wow. That's a lot. Second, providers, the time is consumed by the regulatory burden. I've already spoken on that. So first off, there's a lack of providers. Secondly, their time is consumed by filling out paperwork instead of working on the patients themselves. And so because they have to spend so much time on the paperwork, you go into a doctor's office and then it's like, man, they used to sit here and talk to me for at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes, ask me, how my life is going, how little Johnny is going, what exactly is ailing me. Now it's like, what's on the chart? Okay. All right, fine. All right, done. All right. You have a good day. Go to the front. That's how they have to work now. Why? Because they can't take the time because they've got so much damn paperwork. They can't take the time focusing on you. Because they have to focus on paperwork. The third reason Americans are dying by queue is bureaucratic financial diversion. The U.S. spent $4.1 trillion on healthcare in 2022. Nearly half of that outlay produced no care. So $2 trillion, no care. So instead of paying providers and hospitals and pharmacies to provide the care that you need, that money paid for bureaucracies, administrations, rules, regulations, compliance, and oversight. This is what Obamacare does. This is what government health care does. And you think all this money is going to help you? No, all this money is going to help the politicians, the regulators, the bureaucrats. Absolutely fascinating. Are we living in a police state? All right, just last thing here that I want to touch on. Touched on COVID, gain of function. It's happening here. Here's a headline. I won't go into it. I'll go into it tonight. From Red State. Brazil's socialist president orders nationwide gun grab after a surge in sales. He when he was elected in 2000, that's the first thing he did. He's back at it. Brazil dumbly reelects or stupidly reelects a socialist. Here's something that we haven't been paying attention to, and we should be paying attention to. Executive order from Biden. I mentioned this before, but I just want to reiterate it. So Biden is to announce an executive order increasing background checks, ramping up the use of red flag laws. So Biden is set to announce executive order on Tuesday. Now, this was a couple of weeks ago now, to increase the number of background checks required for gun sales and to intensify the implementation of laws that permit courts to confiscate firearms from individuals deemed dangerous. What is it about the Second Amendment that the Biden administration doesn't understand? That the left doesn't understand? What is it about the voters that vote for these guys that don't understand it? Do you understand? Just think about this. The reason why the left would want to take guns away from, have you ever sat and thought about it? Why powerful politicians would want to take guns from their people? Why the president would? Oh, Carl, it's because it's because of crime. Well, in the story about the new president of Brazil, which was the old president Lula, I forget his entire name. This guy took away the guns, but crime in Brazil rose. When Bolsonaro, who got in, I don't know, 15, 20 years later, when he came into office and he allowed more Brazilians to own guns, crime decreased. Crime decreased significantly. What does that tell you? And that's all the time. Why is it that democratically run, or cities that are run by Democrats, are always more dangerous when they have fewer guns, stricter gun laws? Listen, criminals know where to go to target victims. It's really that simple. And Biden is working on that. Now, I got to recheck with this. He's probably already signed the executive order. I'm sitting here. I'm late to the party here. But that's happened in just the last couple of weeks. And we sit here and we don't even realize it. Guys, we're on our way to a police state. It's going to be up to us to solve it. Now, I do want to ask you this. I want to consider it. I know that our primary season is going to get nasty. Guys, make sure these candidates are talking about policy. I don't want to hear rumors and lies, frankly, that Ron DeSantis is a pedophile. I don't want DeSantis taking cheap shots at Trump over Stormy Daniels. Listen, that stuff is just stupid, man. America has gone too far. All these people lashed out at DeSantis. I'm like, well, Trump said something stupid too. I'm sorry. We're in a dangerous state for these guys to be playing around like this. It's time for everybody to grow up. It's time to talk policy. It's time to talk about ending this deep state and this growing police state in America. Guys, I do want to encourage you and just remind you to go to Pure Health, our friends at Pure Health. Again, if you're looking to ignite your fat-burning metabolism, if you want to boost your energy, you want to transform how you look and feel, you got to start taking care of your liver. Again, fatty liver affects 100 million Americans, and this is why so many of us struggle with weight gain and low energy levels. It's manufactured in the USA, approved by American doctors. And again, it contains 12 botanicals or powerful botanicals clinically proven to recharge and protect your liver. Try Liver Health Formula risk-free today and receive a free bottle of your nano-powered omega-3 to keep your heart healthy as well. You can claim your special offer. All you have to do is go to getliverhelp.com/Carl. That's getliverhelp.com/Carl. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our Rumble channel, The Carl Jackson Show on Rumble and YouTube. All right. Follow us on social media, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever you are on social media. We would greatly appreciate that. All right. And until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.